Good morning from Tasmania, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you here today. Welcome to the second International Online Systemic Functional Linguistic Interest Group Conference. I would like to start the conference by the acknowledgement of country. The Systemic Functional Linguistic Interest Group acknowledges with deep respect the traditional custodians of the land where this program was developed, the Palawa people of the Latruwita nations. The Palawa people belong to the oldest continuing culture in the world. They cared and protected country for thousands of years. We pay respect to elders past and present, and to the many Aboriginal people that did not make elder status, and to the Tasmanian Aboriginal community that continues to care for country. We recognize a history of truth which acknowledges the impact of invasion and colonization upon Aboriginal people, resulting in the forcible removal from their lands. My Tasmanian island is a unique place with spectacular landscapes. Our cities and towns are surrounded by bushlands, wilderness, mountain ranges, and beaches. We stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginal perspectives, culture, language, and history, and a continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice and rights, paving the way for a strong future. On behalf of the University of Tasmania, we acknowledge the custodians of the lands where our conference co-organizers, presenters, reviewers, advisors, and participants live and work across Australia and internationally. We acknowledge all countries participating in the second International Online Systemic Functional Linguistic English Conference, their elders and ancestors, and their legacy to us. Thank you. And now it's my true honor to invite Dr. Sally Humphrey to deliver a welcome speech. Dr. Sally Humphrey is a senior lecturer at the Australian Catholic University, and she has been a really strong supporter for all the activities of the Systemic Functional Linguistic English Group for almost a decade. So thank you so much, Dr. Sally Humphrey, for your welcome speech and plenary today. And now it's over to you.
Hi, look, I'm just going to very informally sort of welcome everybody from wherever you are at whatever time. I can see that we've got 5:35 p.m. We've got 12:30 a.m. We're in a very civilized 8:37 a.m. So I really think it's an amazing kind of initiative to be able to open up our conversation in such a global way, and for people to be so generous with their time to be here, and of course those who will get the opportunity to participate at a different time by watching the recordings. So I'm not going to give any sort of big history of the SFLIG because you've got it in your conference book, and you can really track the development of this special interest group since 2014. Is that right, Vin? You know, since Vin, as a PhD student, down in the depths of Tasmania, decided that, hey, we need to reach out and we need to connect in a way that, you know, we hadn't before, even though me in Sydney, I live 5 minutes away from our Friday afternoon seminars and all of the resources around SFL at Sydney University, at other universities as well. My own university, Australian Catholic University, have you know, given me a very formal and structured way of kind of participating. But I've been aware, you know, that this is where so much of the conversation happens, and you know, the team that is behind all of the initiatives here. You know, I just want to kind of pick up, to me, what are two of the really you know, well, the specialness of SFLIG, and one is the kind of well, the social equity agenda of access and support for everybody who is using SFL in whatever way. It's not limited to contexts, it's not limited to regions, it's not limited to time zones. It's absolutely open to individuals, groups, whatever venue that we find ourselves in when we start to use the theory or the practice of it in any way. So that idea of access is really behind Halliday's initial vision of, you know, what a social perspective is all about. You know, it's not about, oh, we learn by kind of in an individualized only through what goes on in our own brains with our own, you know, kind of motivations and things, but we learn through interaction. And I really think that this SFL, this special interest group has that at its heart. The other thing that really strikes me is just the agility, the flexibility in responding to what's going on in the world and what's going on in people's lives. New technologies come on, well, you know, there's SFLIG. New challenges such as COVID, well, how can we respond? And that's hasn't been possible for other kind of, you know, groups in my, you know, that I participate in the same absolutely, you know, seamless way that it's happened. So those two things, I think, will keep on allowing us to reach out and grow as well. I got a shock when, you know, I came back from leave and there was this sort of like promotion of the conference, and I was kind of thinking, wow, you know, it can't be missed. It's everywhere. You know, everywhere I look, there's my face. You know, I heard that was shocking. That was a bit of a wake up call. Oh wow, you know. But you know, I really appreciate that capacity to reach into people's lives. Now, I'm not going to be able to name all of the wonderful people who've made this conference and other things happen. They're all, you know, written in your document, but you will notice that the whole global reach is represented by people who are working behind the scenes to make it happen. But I think we all agree that Vin, look, I'm tearing up, that Vin's efforts and the energy, the resources, the grace that she has kind of always exhibited. When those fail her, when people around her fail her, like myself, not able to keep up with the activities that I've promised to, she's always graceful and always generous in her kind of allowance of more time or taking over the load or whatever. So I thank you so much for making this happen, Vin, and hope, you know, trust and have absolute faith that we'll have a wonderful conference. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sally, for such an inspiring welcome speech. I'm truly grateful for all your wonderful helps over the year, not only for the interest group, SFL interest group, but for myself, you have given me a lot of invaluable advice and guidance, and I feel very lucky to meet you the first time. I remember in 2013 at the Australian Catholic University Melbourne campus, and until now it has been nearly 10 years. So I feel truly lucky to have the opportunity to work with you and receive all your support. Thank you so much. And at echo what Sally has said, it's really difficult to name everybody who has been involved in this conference and the management of the systemic functional linguistics over years, but you can see all contributors listed in the documents for this program, for the conference, and in the proceeding for the conference in 2021. And I could have done this with the help and support from the wonderful SFL community. And the success of the systemic functional linguistics or all the activities is a credit to everybody. to our community. It's a setup and it's created for the purpose of serving the community, and it belongs to the community. So my most sincere and appreciation and gratitude to all of you have been involved in this effort to create a supportive environment for all SFL scholars. And but for this conference particularly, I would like to acknowledge the wonderful support of my co-convener, Dr. Eric John. He has been brilliant in many ways, and we have worked together in a very enjoyable and productive way to organize this conference. So thank you so much, Eric, for all you have over the past years to work with me to organize this conference. We are such a great team. And thank you so much to all the management team members of SFLIG who has been supporting me and the groups for so many years, such as Dr. Dong Minh Yen, Jackie from US, representatives for the US, Catherine from the University of British Columbia, Isaac Rinlaru from Erica University of Casco, and recently long-term members of the SFLIG, but recently joined the committee for the second conference, like Marco Van Perk from Macquarie University, Winred Sun from Hong Kong Metropolitan University, Patrick Tai Hun from Japan University, and Annie Taiwi from Charles Darwin University. He has recently joined as a committee member, but he has been phenomenal in social media, and that's a great help for the conference. Thank you so much to all of you. If I missed to name everyone, and I'm sorry, but I name all the committee member for this conference, and of course all our fantastic plenary speakers. So thank you so much. I'm so delighted to receive your yes to deliver a speech for this conference, and we are all excited to receive the positive responses. So thank you so much, and you had the opportunity to listen to all fantastic plenaries speakers over the full conference day, and all roundtable experts. So and all the authors and fantastic enthusiastic participants. So now please allow me to take you briefly over the 4 days program for the conference, and some updates I have recently received from some author. So I'm now going to share my screen, and we will show you some updates for the day. So first of all, update for this day, session by Pauline Fan withdrawn due to illness. So background room 3. So Eric, I would like to draw your attention to this session and everybody to this session. This presentation has been withdrawn just this morning due to illness, and another presentation tomorrow by Bob. He also withdrew his paper due to illness. So that's 2 updates for today. 1 session today and 1 session tomorrow. And as you can see,
can you from him from?
And then sorry. And as you can see, all the presentations already included in this schedule, and I will update you every day if there are any changes to the conference programs on each day. And for each plenary, we have 1 hour for the plenary, so the plenary speaker can deliver their talk and give time for discussion. And then for the last session, you can see we located 30 minutes for each individual presentation, and that 30 minutes includes presentation time, question and answer, and transition. So we recommend each presenters will talk within around 20 minutes and leaving 7 or 8 minutes for discussion and 2 or 1 minute for transitions. Okay, so Do you have any questions about the program or anything about the conference so that I can answer? Do you have any question about the program, everyone? No? Oh, good. So, because Eris is here, our co-convener for the second conference, so I think that's all from me. Thank you so much again to everyone who has been involved in supporting the systemic functional linguistics in groups in general and this conference in particular. And I would like to invite Eric, as he's here, if he would like to say anything to our speaker and participants today.
Good morning, everybody. I don't think I have a lot to say, but to thank all of you for getting up early or staying up so late, wherever you are. And yeah, thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy this conference. And this is the start. So I give it back to you, Vin. Thank you so much, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
So much. Okay, so it's 10 minutes left until the plenary. So perhaps we can all get a cup of tea and then we come back exactly at 10 or even a bit earlier to listen to the wonderful lyric speak by our wonderful Sally Humphrey. Thank you, everyone, and see you in the next few minutes. Welcome back, Sally.
That was great. That was great. Got a cup of tea? Oh, gee, hang on. I better go and get my tea.
Yeah.
So it's okay with you if I control the screen, but you'll be recording it. Is that right?
Sure. It's still recording.
Oh,
And
you better stop the recording for a minute.
No, that's fine. We can edit later.
Oh, good on. Oh, aren't you wonderful? How's your family?
Yeah, they are all good. Thank you very much for asking.
Oh, that's great. Yes.
So
Yes. Well, I can see some great names here of really people that you know, I really want to talk to. So I'm really excited.
They are all excited by your speech. So can you please share the screen now, Sally?
Oh, so good. I'll share mine now.
Yeah,
I'll just, I always do it by just sharing the thing, so it gets messy for a while.
This work.
Okay, so I'll just get the slides up.
You see your Zoom. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so your slides now.
And shall I put it on if I put it on slideshow straight away?
Excellent. Yeah, very clear.
All
Thank you.
visible. Okay. I haven't got any logos or anything. I should
That's totally fine. This is perfect.
yeah, great. Oh, now I just have to put my
1 more minute.
Oh, that's great. It's all ready to go. Let me just do a little bit of a
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first plenary of the second International Online Systemic Functional Linguistic English Group Conference. It's my true pleasure to introduce Dr. Sally Humphrey and chair her session today. Dr. Sally Humphrey is a senior lecturer in literacy education at the Australian Catholic University in New South Wales. Sally has worked for many years as a TESOL and language teacher, trainer, and educational linguist in Australia and internationally. She has been involved in research using systemic functional linguistics for over 30 years, particularly to describe the literacy demands of a range of educational and social contexts. She has contributed to a number of influential research projects led by Professor James Martin, Francis Christie, Beverly Derivienka, and Len Unsworth, and contributed to many research publications. Sally has also co-written a number of tertiary level textbooks and workbooks designed to introduce research and practicing teachers to functional grammar for learning in primary and secondary schools. It's our true honor to have you at the conference to deliver your brief. Thank you so much, Dr. Humphrey. And now it's over to you.
Hello, everybody. It's just wonderful to be here. This is probably the title of my talk just needs a little bit of explaining before we get into it. First of all, I'm really aware of the privilege that I have had in learning about language and its uses from an SFL perspective for many years, but really being formally and informally apprenticed into the many theoretical perspectives from right in the heart of Sydney. I did my initial training at Macquarie University, my MA in applied linguistics under the tutelage of David Butt and Chris Candlin, who was a fellow traveller and very influential. Even had lectures from Halliday and Hassan in that time. Jenny Hammond was a lecturer there as well. And then doing my PhD first at Sydney University and changing to UNE under Len Unsworth, and always being able to draw on the resources of all of the universities in the Sydney Basin, and then doing my postdoctoral training with Jim Martin and Amma Mahboob and Shushi Dreyfus. And what a privilege it's been to be able to work with that. I have to go right back though. Before I even did my PhD, I was very, very lucky to be working in what we know as the Right at Right project with the Disadvantaged Schools program in Med East of Sydney, and many of the resources I'll be talking about that are available there. But there I was able to draw from the wisdom of, David Rose, Peter White, Susan Fates, drawing on that rich theory building time of school-based SFL, particularly in that middle and secondary years area that I come from. So look, it's made me very aware of how much I've had my knowledge shaped and pummeled, in a sense, by this constant contact that I've had, and how aware I am of the difference in coming to SFL from many different kind of areas, from many different contexts, and as a tool or as a kind of an interest, and what it's like to hit it from an isolated point of view. So I will need you to participate with me in this talk to help me to shape my understandings of what those contexts are. I've been very lucky to have a very deep conversations with Dr. Dragana Stozic, who is a scholar who's come to SFL from an isolated perspective, and I'm hoping that Gaga will join in and interrupt me whenever it's necessary to kind of give perspectives that matter, and the same. The talk I'm hoping will go towards presenting principles that I think are really important to understand about SFL when we're coming from an isolated perspective, and also to frame a way of apprenticing, drawing very much from the work of David Rose. And I'm very much at the beginning of this, but starting to shape an idea of how we can do that apprenticing, still using a prepare model, but with the more scaffolding and teaching, in a sense, as my teachers often say to me, kind of with an eyedropper rather than a sledgehammer in terms of knowledge presentation. So let's get started. I looked at the presentation titles. Unfortunately, I can see that we haven't got cohesion as a principle in Halliday's social semiotics, which is a shame, because that's a really kind of another perspective to cohesion that it would be really great to have in the program, but I'm sorry that Bob Hodge couldn't be here. But we can see, I've just sort of highlighted in red some of the kind of different sort of aspects of SFL that are informing people's presentations. And we can see basically that it's pretty broad. We've got, this concept of all of these, some of these tools that people are kind of using, being kind of individual, deep analysis using one particular theoretical perspective, or it might be like a system of, okay, here are the, we're going to be using the perspectives from a cross appraisal, for example, to reach into this problem that we're investigating. For many of us too, particularly those working in education, we need a whole warehouse. We need to be able to pick up tools from a very broad scale of SFL to be able to meet the many challenges of education in literacy education particularly, and languages education as well. So this is the concept behind the idea of tools and toolkits, and how do we think about the tools in a systematic way that somehow can bridge us into thinking about the complex levels and compartments, if you like, that SFL has to make as a system of choices. So, oh look, there's a toolkit that I often use, and I kind of looked around a lot for a lot of tools that have, how many drawers, how many compartments and everything, but it's a much more complex than just trying to fit into that compartmentalized idea. Okay, so I just want to go through a few principles that I've just been led by in my own work, and I realize that I come from a perspective very much of that is limited in its understandings of the full toolkit. So again, apologies that I'm not covering anything in the same degree of delicacy or the same degree of understanding that I have of some aspects and some theoretical perspectives. But first of all, what do we share across all of the different perspectives, I think, is the notion that we have a model that has context as a higher stratum of meaning that influences and is influenced by the choices of language that we make. And that's very different from, sorry, I better just get rid of that. Oh, I've got it on screen share. But under this, the model, a circumvenient perspective, is the notion that language is embedded in a social context, not really that the social context is sort of part of the language systems, a linguistic perspective, if you like. So that's a really important perspective to have. The other kind of principles of a foundational toolkit that I think are really important to sort of be aware of. And again, my audience here, is not really those of the community that are being apprenticed. It's more the community as a support system for those who are isolated. That's I should have said that right at the beginning, that's kind of where I feel that I would like to continue being involved in the special interest group. I can't get my head around it. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out myself. And so this is my public figuring out to others who are also interested in supporting those who are being apprenticed in isolated ways. Of course, some of these principles underpin formal educational contexts as well that we have, and in various ways, but they've got a teacher there intervening and making sure that having their own kind of very important dynamic in it. So basically, yes, having the idea that language as function and as class, so that we've got this idea of how do meanings roll out across clauses and texts, and how do the choices that we make from different systems a paradigmatic perspective. So this is already kind of complicates things amazingly to think that not only do we have class labels, as most grammars will give us kind of class labels similarly to these to get our head around and build understandings of, but we've got always to consider the function of those classes. We've also got the idea of language as a system of choices, resources for meaning rather than lists of rules. Okay, so of course the mood system is often given to illustrate this, how we go deeper into the choices that are available to us, depending on our uses. The idea of language and context as metafunctionally organized is another really core principle, not a rigid principle, and I think more and more as we see many people developing ways of looking at texts that are kind of use couplings and interactions across these metafunctions, necessarily so. But it's still really useful to have this connection that we can look at this organization of SFL from these meaning systems that can connect in a more or less to the aspects of context that we are thinking about. And this brings us to a kind of a different direction that we might have, but not incompatible, as Martin has often said, of thinking about this stratified model of context, which has genre lifted up into a higher level of abstraction than register, and also having this stratified content plane of language with discourse semantics and lexicogrammar. And with the, we've still got the stratified content plane of language with lexicogrammar and semantics, but as we'll see, a different kind of understanding of what that relationship is. Okay, so I think I'm presenting these not to teach about them, but to kind of just thinking about framing when we choose a resource to learn about the grammar as an isolated scholar, what is that resource based on? What framing does it give, or does it combine? And we'll see that, many of the resources that are apprenticing resources combine understandings from across these models very usefully. So, but I think it's really important in order to grow in our understandings of a theory and the tools that are available to kind of know where we are. And that's always been really what I've tried to do with the resources that I work with, is to try to situate in some way so that the scholar can grow their knowledge beyond what I'm offering. So where to start? And I think the learner's context of use has always been where I've been as my starting point. So is the learner learning a language? Is the learner leaning? I've got leaning there instead of learning. That's quite I wonder. So learning, sort of geography through language. How does that kind of influence the sort of resources that I make available? Or are they learning about language? For example, as a primary school teacher in Australia, there's a stream of teaching English, which is teaching about the language in its own right, as well as a resource for literacy and literature study. So there's those things to consider, Halliday's kind of principles in terms of learning. And some examples of that might be, kind of, again, you who are listening, or the people that you're in contact with might be kind of having a context that is similar to that. I know that Dragana has told me that she kind of came to Australia to do a PhD and saw SFL as a tool, as an additional tool to the theories that she already had for shedding light on the meaning-making resources. That is a really common way, and I wonder if that is something that is shared by those here, that you came across it maybe through somebody, a supervisor or a colleague, or a resource that was sort of, you were exploring, a reference, and thought, oh, actually that's kind of might be useful for me to explore this topic earlier. So at this stage, I just want to stop and just ask, if there's anybody who would like to share their context of how you came to SFL, and whether or not I've got it right in terms of the types of contexts. Anybody like to just unmute and chat?
Hi, Sally. Can
Hi.
I
Great,
add
Eric. Yes, tell
my
us.
experience very quickly?
Yes.
So I started my SFL journey in 2012 when I first started my academic career as a research assistant with Professor Gail Forey. So that was a writing project that I was engaged in. So I was told to develop a website. So I have to admit, I have almost no coding or HTML experience in making a website, but there was a double challenge. I was to annotate literature reviews and research reports from MA students in order to figure out the language resources for students to engage in kind of objective evaluation, like through the use of appraisal. So that was how I got in. Yeah.
I think that's very interesting. Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing that, because I see we have such a strong strand of appraisal throughout the conference, and increasingly through, all of that time that I've been involved in SFL generally, it is increasingly kind of a way in to, actually, here's something that is compatible. That's the wonderful thing about appraisal. It's compatible with other rhetorical kind of ways of thinking about things. It's seen as enriching rather than competing with sort of other theoretical perspectives. And it answers questions in a very, very nice way. In theoretically, I think I've used it myself in my PhD and was making. Would anybody else? Yes, Kai, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah. Do you hear me well, Professor?
I can.
Yes. I'm from Vietnam, and as a teacher practitioner, I came to SFL around 2019, 2020 from my English teacher, Dr. Hồ Lê Vũ, graduated from doctoral program in Georgetown University, and he did his doctoral dissertation in argumentative writing from SFL framework. And as a teacher in Vietnam, I applied SFL framework from the perspective of thematic profession in teaching writing skills, and some models from cognitive grammar to teach modal verbs, and I combine the teach modal verbs in cognitive grammar with thematic progression to raise my students' awareness of how to make their argument in teaching writing skill. And I also teach listening and speaking skills using a lot of videos to make my lessons more authentic and similar to natural language from daily conversations. Yeah, that's all.
That is
And I'm
quite
really
amazing.
interested in SFL. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it just seems to me as though you've got so many tools, as I was saying, with people who are in education and with the argumentative, education, you're kind of very much drawing on those, systems of appraisal and other related systems, as well as you say, with speaking and listening, you're getting right into the very complex areas. So thank you very much for sharing that. I'd love to just listen to people all day. This would be my idea of a great talk these days. However, I have got a few more slides, so I'll just go forward and just again invite you to interrupt if you would like to add something to question and using the chat. I can see that there are some questions in the chat already, and I'll certainly address those individually or as a group as we go. Okay, so let's go and look at the resources from this sense of a toolkit, but I won't be using any particular toolkit here. There are lots of toolkits that we've all kind of got underpinning. So I'm just going to be sort of drawing attention to some of the seminal textbooks and web-based resources and whatever that have particular framing. So, you know, in terms of the lexicogrammar and the organized metafunctionally of grammatical systems and how they relate to the context, we have seminal resources by Halliday and Matheson, by Graham Locke, Jeff Thompson, unfortunately, is no longer with us, David Butt, and I put David Butt and Suzanne Eggins. These are, you know, I'm quite limited in my knowledge, of course. I'm Australian-centric in so many ways, and I would really appreciate anybody popping in the chat any other resources they've used from this perspective of lexicogrammar systems. So then we have grammar companions. So there's a range of resources such as, you know, the functional grammatics, which is kind of seen as or prepared as, oh, sorry, I've used the wrong one. I've got this from Google. Functional Grammatics is a wonderful book. However, I was aiming there for the book that Jim Martin and Claire Painter and Christian Matheson prepared as exercises and answers to a functional grammar. So I'm sorry about that. Our own work, Shushi Dreyfus and I were working with, and Louise Droger were working with Butt et al.'s using functional grammar and found that we needed tutorial resources. And so that was the beginning of my writing of resources with a book that Louise Target Text published, analysing functional grammar, and Lisa Fontaine has skills-based resources in that, and our own John Callow as a companion to Crescent Van Leeuwen's visual grammar book, which I haven't even got a picture of, but that's a kind of a sampling of the kind of companions that have been put up either as tutorial resources or standalone kind of exercise books with answers in the back of the book. Then we've got it's sort of contextualized in educational contexts. There's a range of resources of both companions and recontextualizations that have been written for particular ESL, broader EFL, and then, for example, working grammar, secondary English, and very much contextualized, these ones very much contextualized in the Australian curriculum context. And online, I just went for a bit of I did know some of these resources, but I just went for a bit of a Google and YouTube sort of immersion in the last few days, and blown over by what has been made publicly available. And, you know, hope that you can take these slides when I, you know, give them to you and go and explore these wonderful resources. An Introduction to Functional Grammar by Annabelle Lucan has got an amazing set of resources there from the grammatical point of view, as well as others. The University of Bologna, very much contextualized in translation and in EFL student contexts, and introductory presentations that are so engaging and framing by Patrick Mannion, Nare Lueda, and I'm sure so many more. So please pop in chat if you've got more to offer here, and I'll, you know, continue. Of course, these, you know, going to the ISFLA website will certainly open up the you know, a lot of these resources that are already there. Okay, so now looking at kind of working beyond the lexicogrammar systems, and of course, Halliday always did that with Beyond the Clause in even the early 1985 publication that I was educated in. So it's not a new thing. But if we look at when I was started to research academic language in my master's degree, when I was looking at the general academic literacy or academic language sort of kind of literature, the only SFL reference that was kind of made note of was cohesion. Okay, so cohesion represented a breakthrough, I think, to talking out from the to other and bridging applications in academic language study, which is a very big area of research and application. So I'm forever grateful for these resources, for opening up my kind of toolkit for being able to understand how my students were making meanings in writing and how I could support them to do that. And then working with the, I also have to say that the notion of semantics did not only has not only been limited to cohesion, but obviously semantic networks that Hassan and others have been involved in is another big area that I haven't been engaged in, but I know has informed many people who've been applying in academic literacy and other contexts, child language development, for example. But looking at discourse systems, discourse semantic systems that have been developed to talk down to the lexicogrammar in a very sort of systematic way of realization of like how do these meaning systems get realized by the grammar, and how do they connect with the register. The framework developed by Martin and Rose in English text, working with discourse, of the systems of interpersonal systems of negotiation and appraisal, textual systems of identification and periodicity, and ideational systems of ideation and conjunction. All of these represent different aspects of cohesion that have been systematized and built into a metafunctional perspective, rather than being just seen as textual resources, seeing their influences across metafunctions. And the texts that have been very seminal in putting this perspective forward, English text and working with discourse, and of course many others concentrating on one aspect. For example, the Martin and White's language of evaluation, looking at the appraisal systems. In terms of the big picture of genre relations, looking at a stratified model of context and very much using discourse semantics as the realization tool, genre relations has been incredibly important in putting together those educational contexts that were researched through the Write It Right project from both a primary and a secondary point of view, and going out into the workplace, which was, the area that David Rose was seminal in kind of paving a way towards there. So, and in social situations, and taking very much a positive discourse analysis perspective. So this resource book has been incredibly important. And the plethora of genre-based resources attests to just how, from an education point of view, what a breakthrough having genre as a kind of way in to thinking about language systems has been incredibly useful. So again, this is just a sampling of resources and mostly privileging Australian and North American scholarship here as well. I've got here a link. I think that might be on the next slide as well. This is a blog, an SFL blog called Educational Semiotics. It's still around. It was set up, back in the day, probably about 10 years ago, by Pauline Jones and myself. I think were kind of the first sort of players, and we invited people to share resources that they had that were about sharing in an educational semiotics. And I'll just kind of go there if I can. This doesn't slow me down too much, and just show how these, when we look at some of these resources, look at this, we've got the ads, of course, we can't get anything for free these days. But if we look at some of these initial resource books that are way out of print, we sat there for ages scanning and popping them in. No, I didn't, my daughter was there, but look, exploring procedures, there's a teacher's book introduction, as well as the resources for children. These are, written by a team led by Jim Martin, Francis Christie, Joan Rothery, Mary McInharari, really kind of beginning this deep conversation, and very generous in their presentation. So please go and explore those resources if you are in a teaching perspective, and also pop more in, do anything that you have that's freely available to share. We would really, really appreciate that, adding to it as, part of our kind of access and equity agenda. In the workplace, we have, the scientific literacy, which was republished as science literacy by the New South Wales Adult Migrant Education, media literacy, where Peter White, Ricodeema and Susan Faiths did that research, and also administrative literacy, which I haven't got a picture of, that has been very important as well. So again, workplace, looking at genre, and very much starting to build up these discourse semantic systems through the work, the research in the Write It Right project. Very, very important. And beyond English, Alice Caffarel's work in French, and new work in English, Spanish and Chinese, and very other resources, of course. I know that I'm leaving out people even who are, here with us today. So I really apologize for that. Now, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes just talking about some pedagogic principles that we've been developing in this forthcoming tome that we've just been contracted to produce for Routledge. And this is with my colleagues Ruslana Vesterland and Olya Malin, building a language toolkit to teach the WIDA standards. Now, the WIDA standards, Wisconsin, I think it's just called WIDA anyhow. It's basically for the English as an additional language context in the US, and it's been adopted. These standards have been adopted by 48 states. And I've always been very impressed by the development of these standards as being really opening opportunities for really rigorous exploration and apprenticeship into the tools of SFL. So congratulations to all of those who contributed to the development of these standards. And we're really excited to start to build a toolkit, a language toolkit, learning about language for teachers who are working with the WIDA standards. So in terms of working out pedagogic principles in a broad sense, we want this to be kind of based around supportive instructional cycles, looking at it as a practical workbook for tutorials, for example, or as a standalone textbook. Now, we understand that resources are used very differently when there is a very expert teacher involved. And but we've realized that a lot of teachers who are charged with introducing students to SFL, perhaps as one of a number of theories in a course, do not have the depth of knowledge themselves to be able to really get behind the exercises that are presented. So we, my idea is to err on the side of explicitness, cover the bases that need to be covered, even if it means not selecting as much, as many of the important tools that are there. We organize it by context. So it uses the meta-language, initial meta-language that is from the WIDA standards, but always introducing the technical SFL meta-language so that students know where they are in the systems and know where to go further from that. So even though every context has this kind of bridging meta-language that is absolutely necessitated, if only by political reasons, but often by functional kind of constraints and opportunities. But making connections outward to the context is absolutely important, but making connections back to the theory is really important as well. And a very important kind of concept of how we're going to sequence the content, to recognize examples of the target resource in its whole text context. So in WIDA standards forms, it's narrating, informing, explaining, arguing, which are very useful because, except for informing, which I think is a little bit too broad, but we can kind of connect back to language patterns from those types of broad categories. How do we identify and describe grammatical forms and functions of the resource? We describe patterns of language composed for different purposes rather than just language isolated kind of examples. Explain how patterns of language vary according to the content, the audience, the mode. So here's kind of really reaching into that idea of meta-language as not only identifying kind of terminology, but describing patterns and explaining it. And that to me is the sort of the full understanding of what I mean by meta-language, that it's doing all of this. It's not just a term, okay? And also some application, in this case, to classroom instruction and assessment. Another key principle is the adaptability of the content for multiple formats, that these, with the various technological affordances that we have now, we can look at how we can present, games and quizzes based on the content that is in the book. So in terms of, the pedagogic steps, I'm influenced very much by the prepare model that I've been using for writing instruction pretty well all of my SFL life. And this model by Dara Vianka is particularly good because it really does have a delicacy in terms of going into sub-cycles. As we're learning about the genre, we can also have practical-based activity that is spiraling along all the way through. Rather than, I think some models, I'm not doing a pedagogical kind of analysis here, but some models of the teaching learning cycle that I've used, have required a great slab of teaching time, a great slab of teacher-led joint construction time before there is really a handover. In this kind of model, we have handover happening all the time spirally, but the teacher is always kind of there to prepare for each of those. The other model, and I'm sorry if David's here, my visual here is not very attractive. I don't know why I couldn't find a nice colourful version of this lovely model. But in the Reading to Learn model that David Rose has developed over time with a lot of collaboration from those researching in different contexts, the task is the central learning activity. And on each side of the task is really valuable teaching. So I've looked at so many samples and developed them myself of these cycles of how can we distribute the teaching, the kind of exhausting, if there's so much content, how can I present what I need to? How can I distribute it before and after the task? And that is what I have valued so much from my use and learning from David in terms of pedagogic steps. And I just want to show you now how, I'm not going to sort of go through this in any thing because I do want to leave time for discussion, but I want to show you how we've kind of put together just a draft. This is just for the proposal of our book, but it has been, as we say, enthusiastically accepted by the committee, and we're very open to how it can be further informed by not only SFL content, but SFL pedagogic informed models. So our basic steps in this task-based cycles that we've set up, an orientation, obviously, to the language resource that we're focusing on and its meaning-making function, illustrated within one or more authentic disciplinary texts. So always starting from the contextualization in a text, in a discipline, in this case, in a discipline, because we're looking at the disciplines of schooling, which is the wider context. We look at an exploratory task in the orientation. Now, this exploratory task doesn't necessarily have answers in the back. It's a broader task to kind of key into some of the areas that we'll be exploring. We look at an accessible visual language summary, generally in the generally as a table or a diagram with examples, and this is where we can really make the links to bridge back to the wider meta language and to relevant references that are available to us and to the technical meta language of SFL systems. And because it's presented as a table, there's never the sense that students or learners have got to wade through it. It's there as a resource, as a reference. Then we have our core task with one or two application exercises, space provided for completion. So I don't know whether we'll get away with having as much space as we really need, but we really like the idea of not just having the task, but having the idea that our learners can engage straight away with this rather than taking it to an exercise book or another computer scene. Right in the book is the even if it's an online an e-version of it. We have links to the answers that are provided at the end of each chapter, and the answers kind of can be sort of, they have a certain amount of guidance as well. But importantly, our reflection kind of section after the exercise is where we provide further elaboration and explanation of the language features. And that emanates from the core task to address potential challenges, quirky bits, tricky bits that are there. And then we go into the practical classroom suggestions for applying it. This is not new at all, but it's a way of, Beverly Derivanka and Pauline Jones also have a similar kind of classroom suggestions kind of at the end of their wonderful kind of teaching and task-based learning things. So each of the kind of ways, each of the particular language features that we're looking at kind of go through those steps. But then at a more general level, I suppose we've got a spiral kind of approach where we kind of introduce more broadly exploratory tasks and introductions at a more general level. So just a little bit of a kind of an overview. Our exploratory task here, for example, is talking about lexical density. Lexical density is a very important kind of sort of big picture category for the content of the WIDA standards. So we start by asking learners to read the text and consider how each achieves a level of language density. Now, selecting these texts is the behind the scenes work that goes on to selecting texts that have different levels, that have cross contexts in terms of the different genres that might be represented and the different disciplines that might be represented, and that are short and to the point, that don't kind of take learners into a lot of reading, a lot of work, but that still have integrity as learning resources. So 5 texts there to kind of get a sense of where lexical density might be important to consider in these K-5 elementary level resources. Then we have this reflection, and notice we have this, you may have noted, it's a big kind of theme that we have where we pick up on what you may have noted, whether that is, oh, wow, the answers told me something, else. I wonder why. We've tried to get there to kind of pick up on that. You might have noticed, right? And we go through kind of the general observation, and then, kind of look at where we're going to go, how this takes us forward, how we might be looking at something different. So, for example, grammatical forms and functions within the noun group vary according to the purpose and other elements, and we go back and give examples from the variation that we're going to be looked at. So now we go to a level, kind of one of the tools, we'll be looking at the expanded noun group as a way of achieving lexical density. Again, we have an orientation to the noun group, to pre-modifiers, and here's the first of our language, our grammar summaries. They're not grammar, or it's not, language summaries, meta-language summaries. I think we should be kind of making sure we use that concept more. And we have it sort of just set out with plenty of examples to be able to sort of make sure that it's represented, kind of different contexts there that people might be playing with. And then going down into pre-modifiers with particular tasks. And here we have the answers in the back of the book that might kind of be referred to, or that are referred to by students. Different type of exercise there to create noun groups, to reorder the words to be able to do that. And again, a reflection. It can be challenging to distinguish the function of modifiers that may be used to describe or to classify. For example, you may have placed the adjective red before the adjective Australian in task 2. Let's just go back and see what that was. The red Australian kangaroo, okay, is most commonly found in flat, arid, open plains. So why would we put red before? Why would we put it in a different place? In this case, the adjective red refers to a type or species of kangaroo and thus a classifier. As this example shows, distinguishing classifiers often requires specialized knowledge. Okay, so in that case, we're looking at the modifiers of color come before those of origin, might be a principle that students start with, but that when it's used as a classifier, it comes kind of closer to the noun. And just in reading this, I'm realizing that Australian, of course, is already a classifier. So why would I put red after Australian? Is it the concept of the species coming closer to the noun? Now, that's going to take me back to the drawing board for the next draft to find out why when two classifiers are used together, why one is preferred to the other. So I'll take answers on that when we get to the discussion, please. Okay. So there's also the notion of intensifying. Can I put very before it? If I have a classifier, it typically cannot be modified. So there's our very important kind of functional teaching that goes on after the task. If I tried to do that work before I set the task, I think everybody would just go home. That's what I find in my classrooms anyhow, being very targeted to doing the teaching and the activity in a kind of selected way, and then application, classroom suggestions. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. Oh, yes, because I want to have back to I can share again when if people would like to look at something again. I'm absolutely happy to do that. But I've just got gallery view on now, and I'd really like to open up. We've only got, you know, kind of a few minutes, but to open up any. I can see that there are comments in the meeting chat, which I'll take note of and distribute kind of widely to anybody who would like to sort of have more idea about the resources. Margot is saying, you know, reflection is integral to Derivanka's model and important for fostering a more meaningful understanding of language as it encourages. Exactly. I totally agree. I think that, but it's in a sense, the reflection is, you know, in the rose cycles, I've just, that elaboration, I guess, is just so much a part of the keeping teaching going rather than the handover. So it's kind of handing over and handing back in that kind of way that I particularly, I just think the application of that's wonderful. Anybody would like to?
Thank you so much, Sally, for your amazing presentation. That's provided a lot of valuable resources for scholars or members in isolated areas to self-study. I think your presentation is particularly meaningful for this group, because many members are in isolated areas. So thank you so much for sharing the valuable resources. And I'm so excited about your forthcoming books about pedagogical for self-study. I can't remember the whole title now, but yeah, really look forward to your new book about self-study as well. So open to discussion, everyone.
I just want to comment on Marwa's kind of idea that lexical density can be achieved through nominalization. Exactly. We've divided this chapter into the noun group and then nominalization. So I didn't get to that resource, but that's, you know, even at elementary level, which is the focus K to 5, you know, we've still realized that nominalization is, or the WIDA standards realize that nominalization is a very important tool for lexical density. So thanks for that observation, Marwa.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you for the question, Marwa. Please feel free to turn on your video and ask question, everyone.
Hi, Sally. I just wanted to mention that there's about the adjectives, there's just an order of adjectives that students have to learn, and there's no, like, it's not an SFL thing or anything like that.
That's great, Jacqueline. But I guess, I mean, yes, that's what I'm thinking, that might kind of go hand in hand as complementary to the kind of describer classifier or epithet classifier, to have that there. But I wondered how it would cope with when the classifier is a noun. you know, that's also you know, when the pre-modifier can often be a noun. So I think there's a lot for me to learn before I really, you know, from you, and you know, the classic ways of thinking about that are really important. Thank you.
Any further questions, everyone? 3 more minutes left.
I think it's too early in the morning, don't you think?
Yeah, it's nearly 10. It's not early yet.
Maybe,
Well,
maybe.
yeah,
Not if you're in New York. Now we're about ready to go to
Oh,
sleep.
may I just pick up
Yeah.
on? Can I just pick up on? I'll finish off, of course. But Jenny has just popped in this about the order of adjectives, and I think this is really great. The narrowing of types. So an Australian kangaroo, well, you know, basically that's a pretty broad category, isn't it, of kangaroos, because most of them are in Australia. And so the red kangaroo is a narrowing of the species type. So I love that, and thank you so much, Jennifer, because that to me says we can still keep the integrity of the functional approach. Yes, there's an order of adjectives that we can absolutely kind of bring in, but we can still get the idea that we can talk functionally, get, you know, sort of, which I think is very in keeping with our intention. That, as you say, yes, Jennifer, its focus is still functional. So great. Let's get on with this conference now, and I'll finish up. Thank you very much for coming along.
Yeah. Okay, any more question, everyone? No, okay. Yeah, so let's all thank Shirley again for her wonderful speech, and thank you everybody for attending the opening and the plenary today. And we'll have 50 minutes for morning tea. So please remember to come back at 10:50 to attend a series of fantastic parallel presentations. Thank you again very much, everyone, and see you again soon. Hi, Jennifer. Yes, I just open all the breakout rooms so you can join and get organized.
Sorry, Vin, I just pressed not now instead of accept. Can you tell me what breakout room my sessions?
Yep, you are in breakout room 2, Sally.
Right. Would you mind inviting me again? I'm so sorry.
Sure. No problem at all. And the last presentation by Văn Thắng Nguyễn, he just emailed me he's not available due to internet connection.
Oh, what a shame.
Yep. So I just
That's the last one, right?
it's the last one. So I will invite you to invite Sally where. I will move to.
Oh, you could just move me if you want to.
There are so many, so bear with me. I'm going
Sorry,
to.
it's ridiculous, isn't it? Being the problem child.
That's okay. We are still joining, so we still have few minutes left until the next session. Where is Sally? I couldn't find you in the record room. Let's see.
Well, I'm wondering whether I can.
Hey Google.
Oh, look, I can say join breakout room. You just tell me what the what number it is.
Two, Sally. You are in number 2.
Oh, wonderful.
Two.
So I've been assigned to breakout room 1.
Oh no, it's assigned randomly. But you at the chat can choose to join the right group.
So, but I have no choice.
You just leave the group, just choose leave the group and join the room 2 instead.
So, but
join breakout room.
Sorry, yes,
I can't see you in breakout room 2.
I'm sorry,
we're supposed to be in
interrupt.
room.
Yeah, but we don't actually have option to choose which room to go to.
Yeah.
We've been assigned rooms and we've been assigned to the wrong rooms.
And when I leave the breakout room, I see no other option. There's only one breakout room.
Who is speaking? Gia Zen?
Yeah, yes.
I've only got one choice, and that's to go to breakout room 1. So I went there and I couldn't go to another.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I've been assigned to breakout room 3, but I'm presenting in room 2.
Good. I'm glad it's not just me, Erica.
Let me close this room, and then I will let people to join the room.
Thank you.
Sorry, everyone.
Thank you.
Just this, we'll do this again.
Hi, I'm still waiting to get moved into room 1, I believe.
Sorry, everyone. I just I'm closing all the rooms, and then I will open them again, and you can join which room you will be in. So if you are in room 2 and you just click join, it automatically assigns me.
Thank you.
So 15 more seconds.
Okay. Thank you.
It's okay. Thanks. A few more seconds. Now, okay, so the car room.
Vin, my speakers are not in room 3.
Yep. So now
That will be. Sorry.
open or room recreate. Let participants choose rooms. Okay. So now you can choose the room you would like to join. Everyone.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that looks like room 1.
Yep, you are in room 1, Jackie.
Okay, I was in room 3 for some reason. Okay.
You can choose leave and join room 1. Can you do that? Hi, can you join the room you like?